Hello. For those of you who are new here, my name is One Eye Guy, and today we're going to talk about what happened to my face. Stay tuned. So why do I have one eye? That's what we're going to talk about. Let me go back to the beginning. Early 2020, I'm sitting on the couch watching Netflix. You know, just giving myself a little face massage. You got to relax the muscles in your face, right? And I noticed kind of a weird soft bump on my cheek. It was on my cheekbone right next to my eye, but it very clearly wasn't bone. There was some give to it. I go to my mom. I say, "Hey mom, I just found this thing on my face. It's kind of weird, don't you think?" She goes, "Yeah, like why don't we get a little doctor's appointment scheduled, see what they think about it. That is kind of weird." So I go to the doctor, and he's like, "Yeah, it's probably just an infection." One thing that didn't really line up is that usually with an infection, there's some irritation. And what I thought was a little odd was that I didn't have any sort of pain, irritation, nothing like that. Long story short, we got a biopsy and it came back inconclusive. The second time around, we got a slightly more aggressive biopsy. You know, they take a little larger sample of tissue. And I remember the night that I got the results of that biopsy, both of my parents walk into the living room at the same time, and my heart sinks because I already know what it is. And they tell me, yeah, you know, it's a cancer, it's a spindle cell sarcoma. So at that point, it's like, nah, well, fuck, that's not what you want to hear as a 17-year-old. So at that point, it was time to escalate things. So we go in and we talk to a team of oncologists. What they tell me is that, you know, this is a super rare form of cancer. To start off with, it's usually only seen in people who are approaching their end years, if you will, you know, like 70, 80-year-olds. And it's usually only found in the extremities, in particular, like your femur, you know, your leg bones. So I hit a double rare cancer, which is, you know, interesting. But what that means is that they didn't really know how to approach it. You know, they had never really seen this type of cancer in a person of my age in this location. So what they decided on, or what they recommended to us, was that I come down to San Diego to the Rady's Proton Center and get specialized proton radiation therapy, which they have seen it be effective in similar cancers. So we're like, all right, cool, sounds like a plan. The concern with this cancer was that when they do surgery for cancer, they need to take a margin of extra tissue to ensure that they've gotten all of the cancerous cells out. Because if you leave one cancerous cell, guess what? Those things replicate like motherfuckers, and it'll be back before you know it. So by the time I met with the oncologist, it had grown rapidly enough that it was already too close to my eye to be able to perform surgery without removing my eye. So the reason they wanted to send me to San Diego for this specialized proton therapy was to ideally shrink the tumor enough to be able to perform surgery and leave my eye intact, which all sounded fine and dandy to me. In about, I want to say, March of 2020, my dad and I drove down to San Diego, and we stayed in a Ronald McDonald house, and for 5 weeks, 5 days a week, I went into the proton therapy center, and I had my head locked down to a bed with a plastic mask that they custom fit to my face, and they shot me with a laser beam of protons. Throughout this 5 weeks, it basically just continued to get worse. It continued to swell in my cheek. You know, by the time we were done with this proton therapy stuff, it was a golf ball sized mass in my cheek, and it was pulling my lower eyelid away from my eye. My eye was constantly watering, you know. I was getting double vision because the tumor was pressing up against the actual structure of my eye. Basically, the radiation therapy didn't work too good. So I got back home to the Bay Area and I met with my team of oncologists, and basically they were like, yeah, this thing needs to come out now. With the rate that it's growing, and especially while being blasted with protons, which was supposed to not only stop its growth but reduce its size, they're like, this thing needs to come out now before it starts to spread. So I met with oncologists, obviously, plastic surgeons, eye surgeons, this and that, and they came up with a plan to basically 3D print a titanium cheekbone that would go into my cheek, because obviously the tumor was growing on the cheekbone. That was going to have to be removed as well. They were going to remove my eye, remove my cheekbone, and implant this titanium prosthetic, which, you know, at this point I had accepted the fact that my eye is gone, whatever. But I thought I was going to get to have, oh god, boys are cooking. So I thought I was gonna have to get, or I was gonna get to have a titanium cheekbone, which to me sounded pretty fucking cool. They decided pretty shortly after that no, this cancer is such a threat, and it's growing so rapidly that we can't even take the time to fabricate a titanium cheekbone. This shit's coming out ASAP. So that's what happened. 3 months after I first noticed this tiny little bump in my face, I had a golf ball sized tumor on my cheek, and it needed to be removed. So on May 18th, I went in for surgery. What they ended up doing is an orbital exenteration, which basically means they clear out the orbit of your eye of all of its contents. So obviously your eyeball, your optical nerve, yada yada yada. They also removed my cheekbone, and then they cut a 12-inch hole in my leg, in my thigh, from which they harvested a little bit of muscle tissue to fill in the hole that was left, as well as a nice big patch of skin, which they then slapped on my face. So why do I look like I do? Well, it's because I have thigh skin on my face, yeah, no eye and no cheekbone. Kind of fucked. It was a couple of months of, you know, recovery and allowing for the skin graft, the patch as they called it, to heal. And then I began one of the nastiest chemotherapies on the market, which is known as AIM chemotherapy. AIM is an acronym that stands for adriamycin, ifosfamide, and Mesna, I believe. One of those three is known as the Red Death because it is the most wicked chemotherapy drug you can get. And this fucking dude. I think that's a 650. Yeah, totally 650. What the hell was that? $650, boys. Okay, and we're back to story time. So I took it upon myself to look up worst chemotherapy drug. First thing that comes up, doxorubicin, also known as adriamycin. That's the brand name, adriamycin, which is the first ingredient in AIM chemotherapy. So this shit is nasty. I'll leave you to read about it on your own, but it's pretty brutal. Okay, so I did what's called AIM chemotherapy. And the way it works is that each cycle is a 3-week period. So what happened to me is I would spend 1 week in the hospital, 5 days, getting infusions every single day for those 5 days. And then I would have 2 weeks off to kind of recover, and then I would repeat the cycle and start all over again. Another week in the hospital, right? I was supposed to do 5 cycles. I ended up doing 4 because it was so fucking brutal. And I basically tapped out. We'll see if that comes to bite me in the butt. But the chemotherapy was really just to clear out whatever cancer cells they might have missed during the surgery. So I ended up doing 4 cycles of 3 weeks each for a total of 4 months of chemotherapy treatment. And it was not fun, dude. I started off at 145 pounds and relatively lean. I had started working out as a senior in high school, but I was 145 pounds. I'm 5'10", and you know, that's a pretty skinny guy. I was a high schooler, right? By the end of my chemotherapy, I had dropped down to 120 or 125 pounds. So that's 20 pounds. That's a lot of fucking weight. I was pretty much emaciated. I looked like a goddamn skeleton. Yeah, so that really sucked. I lost all my hair, of course. I lost my eyebrow, the one remaining eyebrow that I had. All my beard hair fell out, of course. The worst side effect by far was the mouth sores that you get. The way that this chemotherapy works is that, and most chemotherapies from my understanding, is that they attack the cells which reproduce fastest. So if you have any cancerous cells in you, they reproduce very quickly, so they're going to get taken out ideally by the chemotherapy. But it also kills all of the other fast reproducing cells in your body. And one of those happens to be your, you know, the lining of your mouth and your throat, basically. You've probably heard that, you know, the tongue is one of the fastest healing organs in the body. Well, yeah, it is, and that's because the cells in your tongue replicate and reproduce so quickly compared to the other tissues in your body. So the mouth sores got so bad that I pretty much just could not eat. It was a literal battle to get anything down my throat. It was absolutely on fire at all times. And yeah, I pretty much just, for the last couple of weeks of chemotherapy, when the symptoms were the worst, I basically just didn't eat. Taking shits, I'm gonna edit this out later, but taking shits also became extremely painful, because guess what other cells in your body replicate very quickly? The lining of your guts. So that also sucked. October 1st, as a matter of fact, was my last day of chemotherapy. And it was also the first day of college, and online college, because it was COVID, obviously. So I had my laptop with me in the hospital, and I was on Zoom for my very first classes of university in the hospital, getting the last of my chemotherapy treatment. So that's, you know, kind of interesting. I think that's kind of funny. But yeah, that's basically my story. Obviously, having only one eye does come with its challenges, you know. Depth perception, obviously, is first and foremost among those challenges. Fortunately, you're totally allowed to ride motorcycles, drive cars, this, that, the other thing, when you only have one eye. Besides that, it's really not so bad. Of course, I'm a little fucked up looking, and there are some social repercussions that come with that, if you will. I have people ask me quite often, you know, what happened, and you know, misunderstanding what is going on with my face. They don't get that it's a you know, a skin transplant. They think it's a bandage of some sort. That's always a little bit weird to have to explain that to people. But also, I've had some really kind and positive interactions. And that's kind of what made me want to talk about this with you guys, is because I figured maybe some of you could relate. Maybe you have a family member who has gone through cancer. Maybe you've gone through cancer, you know? So I hope that by talking about some of this stuff, maybe some of you can relate to it or learn from it. And I'm happy to answer questions, of course. Just let me know what you're curious about. And as a disclaimer, I take nothing to heart in terms of, you know, you're not going to offend me, basically. I've heard it all. I've had every sort of reaction under the sun, and at the end of the day, it's all good. But yeah, for now, that's all I have to say. So thanks for listening. Leave a comment, leave a like. Thanks.